Okay, hit the button. Let's go.
Okay. We're live.
My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco. I'm joined by Dr. Teresa Lily White, Dr. Lenore Walker, Mr. Ed Denzel. Investigation with Dr. T is something that actually was the brainchild of our dean, Dr. Durham. And now, coming up this next season, we're going to be doing it almost weekly, a weekly show on a Thursday night. So lots of really cool guests. It's not just police topics, it's not just corrections topics, but it's topics that are affecting us in kind of all areas. But one of the things that we hope to get across is raising awareness, educating about some of these really important topics like human trafficking, topics like disasters. We did a show, Confessions of a Serial Killer. So for this upcoming season, we've got a couple of really cool things. We're going to have a day in the life of a DEA agent. Another really cool one, which is really close to my heart, is going to be on September 11th. Because not only do we want to talk about 9/11 and the work of the NYPD, but I also want to really look at the mental health outcomes. We also have the human trafficking panel. We are going to bring back our Brevard Sheriff, Sheriff Wayne Ivey. It's always a pleasure to have him on. We're going to have Unfound again, Ed Denzel. He'll be coming back a few times, and that's going to be really exciting and interesting too. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco, as you heard over and over and over again. And welcome to Investigation with Dr. T. We're live streaming from the Fishler College of Education School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel. And I'm joined tonight by my dear friend, who we go back a long time. And she's just been such a great support for me in so many different ways. And when I ask her to do something for me, she just does not hesitate at all. And that's just awesome. Like that's amazing. So here's what I want to do. I want to just show you who she is. And I'm hoping that you all can see her picture on the screen while I sort of read her bio. But if I do read the bio, it's going to take up the entire hour and a half even, right? So forgive me. I'm going to shorten it just a little bit. This is how amazing Dr. Plotkin is. Dr. Plotkin just received last year, 2 years ago, she received her doctorate in education. And I'm just so proud of her. We all are. She has a master's in criminal justice, and she obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in social work from Florida International University. And for almost 21 years, she's been a crime scene investigator in North Miami. She's certified in the field through the International Association for Identification in 2006, handled thousands of cases ranging from burglaries to homicides and suspicious death cases. She's teaching for close to 2 decades, and she receives so many specialized training certificates in various fields of crime scene investigation, like bloodstain reconstruction, photography, crime scene reconstruction, fingerprinting, shoe wear casting. And I know that as I'm saying this, our viewers are just drooling because they all love it so much. They love forensics, right? And if they've ever heard of Dr. Henry Lee, who is a very famous medical examiner, she's worked side by side with him on many, many different things. Some of her crime scene cases have appeared on Court TV. She's written 2 textbooks on crime scene in the crime scene field, and she's working on updating a new one. She's also a member of DMORT, I know I said I wasn't going to keep reading it, but it's so fascinating that I can't help it. So she's a member of DMORT, and we've talked about this before with other guests, which is Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team. And I worked very closely with DMORT during 9/11, during the recovery efforts for a year and a half. So I have a lot of respect and admiration for the DMORT team members, and I'm just really excited about having her on tonight. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited about having her on tonight is because since the last time we had her on, it's really very, very cool. She's going to share her screen now, her camera with us now. But since we last saw her, she has now joined the ranks of NSU School of Criminal Justice. Unfortunately, we can't have her as full time, which would have been awesome. But she has a full-time job. She works at Miami-Dade College. And, I used to work at Miami-Dade College, and I know for a fact that they did not have the crime scene investigation program that they have now. And that's because she built it. Dr. Plotkin built it from the bottom up, and it's super, super, super successful now and effective. And we just really admire you, and we are so grateful that you are an adjunct teaching in our master's program, forensics. But then I'm going to save this for the end because I don't want to blow it. I don't want to steal thunder. But at the end, I'm going to announce something that we're collaborating on through Alpha Phi Sigma, through our chapter and Dr. Plotkin's chapter at Miami-Dade College. And we're going to be collaborating on something, and I'll announce it at the end. But with no further ado, Dr. Plotkin, please share your screen with us.
And you all can see it?
We can. And great. Yep. I removed my spotlight, so you're good to go. It's all you, and I'll field all the questions later. Layla and Justin are with me in the background, and they'll be fielding the questions or comments that are coming up on the YouTube chat. So please, Dr. Plotkin, take it away. Anatomy of Crime Scene Investigations.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. T, for inviting me. And as Dr. Telesco mentioned to you all, we have been collaborating together and teaching together for many, many years. Actually, I started teaching at a university with Dr. Telesco at my first teaching university in 2003. So thank you all so much for joining. And I'm so appreciative when Dr. Telesco invites me to this platform. It is incredibly important. I know that she's had very interesting topics, but very important topics for all of us out in the industry. Topics like human trafficking and, the day in the life, like she said, and the reality of what we do out here. So as she mentioned, thank you for my bio, and I'm not going to go back into that. I've been asked to come tonight and speak to you all about the anatomy of a crime scene investigations. And as Dr. Telesco mentioned, I spent 21 years doing crime scene work in North Miami. I still assist agencies when they have casework, and I teach law enforcement, not only at the college setting, but I teach all over the country and the world. So I'm very fortunate when people are like, please come help us. Because I am a firm believer, unfortunately, that as long as people live in any community, it is not a matter of where, it's a matter of when. And I was actually teaching in Idaho the week after the Moscow quadruple homicide had occurred. And I actually had detectives in the class from there, in the class, and they were from there, and they had never had a case like that before. So the presentation tonight is the anatomy of crime scene investigations. And what I want to do is present you the real thing. All right. And I know that we have Jennifer, who's a medical death investigator. I'm excited that you are here, and I please interact. I love that. We all learn from each other. So you all can see my screen, right? Justin, we can see my screen. No problems?
Yes, no problems.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. T. So I'm going to be talking to you about what's involved in the crime scene investigations, definitions of physical evidence, the reality of crime scenes. So we'll be showing some photographs, skills of a crime scene investigator, and then the process. So I promise it'll be riveting. This is not meant to show you gory graphic videos or pictures like a rotten.com. It's meant to be informative and educational, because what we battle with a lot in this field for all of us is that the shows are not depicting the real world of our forensic process and what we do on the scenes. And is the evidence actually going to link to somebody, or are we going to solve the case? And let me just tell you this, in crime scene, it isn't to solve the case, it's to seek the truth. So that's what we do. So my evidence might exonerate, and that's okay, because it is said that it is better to let a guilty man or a woman go free than to put an innocent person in prison. It is better to do that. So those are our objectives. So let's begin. So the reality of crime scenes. So this is what this shows depict. Oh my gosh, you all, if I could have air conditioning at every scene, I'd be a very happy person. I'd love it if I could have clean scenes. The scenes can be anything, anywhere, and in any condition. So this is what they show, and I love it. I'm like, this is not proper crime scene attire, and we'll show you. But so this might be what I might be subjected to, and I'm sure you all can recognize that, but we call that a hydroponics grow house, and that's where we have marijuana that is growing. The thing that happens is that this is illegal. So when they're growing illegal marijuana, when they're processing cocaine, I've been to those scenes where there's kilos of cocaine, there's cocaine residue everywhere, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of firearms. These are very dangerous scenes to work. They're using usually illegal electricity. They're using a lot of chemicals, and they're going to protect their stash, their grow house. They're going to protect what they're trying to do there, their illegal activity. So these scenes get to be incredibly challenging. We also have, you could have a hoarder's house. All right. I don't know how that is for you all, but we get a lot of this. Again, I'm not judgmental. I actually have absolutely no problem working scenes like this, but the reality is that there is a lot of hazards that are associated with these scenes. So not only do we have the dirt and the squalor and biohazardous materials, I've had people that were squatting in their own homes and they weren't even using the bathrooms. They were just doing their business anywhere they could. Also, there's things living in there besides the people, such as rats, snakes, spiders, all kinds of things in there, cockroaches. We get over a lot of fears when we're working this field. It could be something as simple as a burglary where they're doing ransacking, but you might have a scene where there's actually needles or blood present. So we have to recognize that we have biological and biohazardous conditions as well. Arson scenes. We handle a lot of fire arson scenes. Now, interestingly so, crime scene would not go to a scene where it is an electrical fire and, you know, the house burned. We would go when the house burned and now there's a body or deceased in the house. We would go when it now is not an electrical fire, but an arson. And you all, as we know, arsons are intentionally set fires for the purpose of some kind of illegal criminal act. So in the, you know, they want to burn the house down because they can't pay their mortgage. They want to burn the house down because they're mad at their ex-wife. It could be anything, but it's an intentionally set fire. The fire department handles the arson investigations because they have their own investigators. The moment we step in crime scene is when there's a body or deceased inside of the residence and died as a result of the fire. But our police department would always be involved in an arson type situation because we're taking the report, but the fire department has their own investigators. Now, these scenes are incredibly challenging and are very dangerous to work because not only did the fire cause some issues, but the fire department itself is breaking holes in the wall and the floors so they can actually put the fires out. They're adding a lot of water to these scenes. So they get to be very, very difficult and challenging, not to mention they're also dark because most likely there's no electricity and the burning aspect caused it a lot of charring and soot. So arson scenes are incredibly dangerous and challenging for us in crime scene. Vehicle fires. Again, a vehicle fire, only unless it's intentionally set does it become an issue. I've actually handled cases where a woman called and said, there's a car burning in front of my house. And when the fire department put it out, there was actually somebody sitting behind the wheel of the car. So it was actually a suicide is what it was by setting this car on fire and himself. So those are challenging scenes and dangerous because of the fuel that is in there, whatever they use to set the fire is in there, not to mention that the person themselves is in there as well. So what is a crime scene? You know, it's important that we know where the crime scene is and what it is, because, you know, we'll talk about physical evidence and what it actually is. You know, we're not just out there grabbing everything. We're not just out there arbitrarily saying, oh, this is a scene. There's a reason why we know that it is a crime scene. So what is a crime scene? It's an immediate area or an adjacent area where an offense occurred. It's where the crime actually occurred. There are times where somebody reports that a crime occurred and we find out that it's not even in our jurisdiction. It's in somebody else's jurisdiction. So then that police agency has to handle it. I handled an entire homicide scene with the detective and found out that the actual incident was in the county. It was actually Miami-Dade Police Department. He was shot in Miami-Dade Miami-Dade County in a vehicle, but drove a block into North Miami where he died. But technically, the case actually happened in the county. So it's where the offense occurred. There are times we may not know that. So we're going to have to generate the information. But if we have an active scene, if I have somebody that has died, we're not going to wait a long time to try to figure out where it started because our deceased is here. We also know that we could have more than one scene. So, of course, as I just said, could there be more than one? We call them primary and secondary scenes. So that incident I just told you about where the guy was shot in the county was the primary scene. The secondary is where he wound up, where the car came to rest and he died. We didn't know where the primary scene was at first. So we thought he'd been shot in the location where he died. We found out later that he actually was in another location at the time. So body dumping sites become challenging because a body dumping site, wherever the body has been dumped, is actually probably your secondary scene because the person may have been murdered somewhere else, which is actually your primary scene. So we got to work the body where it's at and then determine if we've got a primary or secondary scene. When establishing a crime scene, do we want them to be smaller because they're more contained, or do we want them bigger? Now, I know that sounds like a weird question, but guess what? We want them bigger. Why would we want a scene to be bigger than it needs to be? One is because I don't really know where all the evidence might be. So, and because of that, I'm going to have to try to make sure that all my evidence is contained within that perimeter. The second thing is, y'all, we don't want the media that close to us. We don't want people watching that close to us. I remember one time I was responding to a homicide scene and I almost ran over the decedent, the victim, because the crime scene tape wasn't put up far enough away from the body. I almost ran him over. That is not necessarily good. So we want to make sure our scenes are bigger than they need to be, and then we can always come in. But you cannot come in and then go out, because whatever's outside that perimeter is now not considered untampered or not contaminated, altered, or heck, even placed there after the incident. So we like bigger, all right? And we call them an inner perimeter and an outer perimeter. So our inner perimeter is where we're working our scene. The outer perimeter is where we can keep our media and the people that are watching outside of this area. So it allows us to do the work we need to do as well without people right there on top of us. And you know what, you all, I've been doing this since 1995. I know I started when I was 12, right? The problem is that now with everybody having camera phones, you know, we really don't want somebody posting on Facebook, on Instagram, a picture of the deceased without his parents knowing first. So we really, really, really try to protect the identity of our victims because we want to make sure that we can tell the family first before they find out on Facebook or Instagram that their child has died or a loved one or somebody in the family. So what is physical evidence? Just because it is on a scene does not make it relevant. Now, I know that sounds a little weird. So if I have a shooting in a bar, is every beer can a piece of evidence? Is every food item that people are eating and drinking, are all the beer bottles, the cups, part of evidence? No. It tells me that people were in the bar at the time. It's relevant to saying that the bar was open and people were there at the time of the shooting. You all, I am not collecting every beer can, every bottle, every cup. I'm not going to do that. The point is, I have to try to seek the truth and make evidence link people to the scene and to one another. Now, have I collected every beer can in a bar shooting? Yes. Why? Because I was told, advised by the detective who was told by witnesses that the offender was in the bar prior to the shooting and was drinking Budweiser beer. Now we've got something, okay? Or Stella, right? It could be any kind of beer. But now they're telling me there's a reason why I might need every single beer can. Because remember, the point of evidence is that I'm trying to link people to each other and people to the scene. I'm going to have to do it. It gets to be really interesting when I am now processing 300 beer cans solely because of the information that we were given. So it's got to be important. It's relevant because it was there in the sense that it's telling me something was happening, but just because it's on a scene doesn't mean it becomes evidence. So how do we actually define it? Well, it could be anything that is big to small. I solved a double homicide that made national TV. Nancy Grace said I was making a name for myself because I was new in the field and found a piece of evidence that was this big, no bigger than like a small pebble. And what it was a part of the crown of the tooth of the female victim who was the mother of the son who reported that the mother shot the father and then shot herself. So when we went to the scene, it was called in as a homicide suicide. By finding that small piece of evidence, which I found in his sneaker, 28 feet away from where the parents were dead, proved that he killed both of his parents. And it was no bigger than a pebble. When we called in a forensic odontologist who made sure he could match it to the crown that was missing in the mother's mouth when the son shot her at close range, and the blowback from being so close actually deposited that crown of her tooth in his sneaker. That's how I found it. Sometimes I say God steps in. I know I am really good at this job. I know I'm very good at this job, but I also do know that sometimes it is absolutely luck or God steps in and takes me in the right direction. So that was a great case. But again, it was this small. We've made cases on fingerprints and some other things. We've made them on something big as well. But they can be anything that is small to big that and then observing it, we're able to determine that it's evidence and that it's going to help us in seeking the truth. So examples. Now y'all are thinking the traditional stuff. I know you are, okay? But you're probably not thinking cotton fibers or hair. You definitely would think blood. You would think maybe tools like a gun or something that might be there. You might be thinking fingerprints. Everybody always says fingerprints. But we can get pretty interesting here. It could be glass. It could be bones. Now also I want to throw this out there. it is said that fingerprints are the most common type of evidence we will find on a crime scene. Now you're saying, how is that? Just because it could be evidence does not mean it actually helped solve the case or seeking the truth. You all, everywhere you go, everywhere you touch, you are leaving your fingerprints behind. When I go to a 7-Eleven that's been robbed and you all were shopping there all day long, a half hour before the incident, what fingerprints do you think I'm going to pick up? Yours, as well as everybody else that was there. Fingerprints can last years if the conditions are right, which also includes the fact that people don't clean or wipe off the surface that they may have been deposited on. So they're the most common because they last. And everybody that's been there leaves fingerprints behind if they're touching surfaces. So in thinking about the bones, well, what about some non-traditional types of evidence? I have made cases off the craziest stuff. So some of it's been jewelry. I made a case off of an earring. When the girl called the guy and said, hey, you want to go back to your apartment? She went back to the apartment with him, had 3 of her buddies waiting, where they came in, shot the guy and robbed him, robbed the place, took everything and shot him. She had taken off her earring and left it on the scene. DNA, it was great. It could be condoms, used condoms. Used condoms are really good, including the ones that might be thrown into a toilet. Yes, I will fish for a used condom in a toilet or anywhere it is left behind. Animals, believe it or not, and y'all are looking at the commercials, so have I. They actually will do DNA on your animals so you can tell what breed they actually are. And people are actually doing this a lot because they're spending a lot of money on their pets to purchase a pure breed animal for showing, for papers. You can actually have their DNA tested to show indeed if their bloodline is pure for the breed you are trying to buy. But I had a homicide with that. The guy killed the girl in her home. She had a German Shepherd. He had a pit bull. What we did is we went for reverse or cross-transfer DNA. We were hoping that his pit bull hair that was on him was transferred onto her when he stabbed her to death. She had a German Shepherd, and we were hoping that the German Shepherd hair transferred onto him when they made that contact. It is called Locard's exchange principle. So there I was, taking dog hair and from both animals, literally pulling samples of dog hair from both. A lot of people don't know this, but University of Florida, okay, was the largest ASPCA grant holder in the country and has one of the largest animal DNA databases out there. So should you have a case with that you think is animal DNA or hair or something you're trying to find out or have analyzed, University of Florida. A lot of people don't know that. So human hair is also something that's important, but you all gets really crazy when you actually could have it. And I had that case where 2 women were fighting and the one girl ran over the other girl with her car and killed her. But before that happened, they were ripping each other's hair out. Well, the suspect wore a hair weave and the victim had her own hair. Y'all, that's a problem because the hair in the victim's fingers was going to come back to a hair weave rather than the actual hair on the girl's head, because she actually had somebody else's hair glued on and woven into her own hair. So what I tell people to do when it comes to cases like that is if you believe that your victim has got hair in her fingers from a suspect that is wearing extensions, a weave, or the hair is not all hers, that instead of going for a microscopic analyzing of the hair for DNA, is actually swabbing that hair that's in her fingers, because in the act of grooming, the subject may have actually like been putting her hair up, put it like this. So we actually would take the hair and swab the hair. So we're looking to get that contact with, rather than the DNA from the hair strand itself. So that's how we have to think outside the box when it comes to crime scene. Shoe wear. I was called the shoe wear queen on my department because I recognize that people can wear a mask to cover their face. They can wear gloves to cover their hands, but none of us can fly. So you all have to walk on and off a crime scene, and I'm going to get you with the shoes on your feet. So I was very into shoe wear as long as the conditions and the scene permitted that. Tile floors, beautiful, beautiful. Some ceramics, laminate woods, fabulous, fabulous. We have a lot of really good techniques out there that are very, very effective for that. And then, of course, as Dr. T mentioned, casting. If I have a shoe impression in soil or sand or something soft, that's a great surface for us, not only to photograph, but to cast. So we'll use casting materials to actually get us that cast off that scene. So shoe wear is very important to us. Knives, machetes, not only are they important to be able to see that it was the instrument that may have been used, but we will have the tools compared to the injuries on the victim. Now, people even in death are decomposing. So those artifacts, those defects are changing, but bone does not. So there was a lot of times that my medical examiner would say, Sharon, I have a very good tool mark on the rib. I have it on the neck or the back of the neck. I have it on the skull. And I know this will sound strange, but they would actually cut that portion of that body out. This is a deceased person, the medical examiner's office, and give me that section of bone to compare to tools that we have found on the scene that we thought might have been the instrument that was used. What makes it important, y'all, is I don't solve the case by saying a machete killed her. What I solved the case in is that the machete killed her, but when I swabbed it and I did fingerprints, I got the husband's DNA and fingerprints on the machete. So now I'm making a connection with this chronology that's important. So we know the machete was matched by the firearms people at our lab. They do tool marking, and they said, Sharon, this machete did it. Before I even sent the tool to them, I've already fingerprinted and DNA'd it. So now I've got the husband's DNA, I've got fingerprints on it, and now, of course, I have matched it to the tool that actually was what was used to kill her. So don't forget how important that these tools can be. Again, with shoe wear, we have tire. So tire impressions. The original tire and the original shoe have what's called class characteristics, meaning a group. Everybody's got a pair of Nikes. That doesn't mean I solved this case or I found out who did it. What's important is the defects in the shoe, in the act of wearing them, that makes them unique. We call that individual characteristics. And it could be the wear pattern. It could be that there's a cut or a slice. It could even be that a pebble was stuck in the tread of the shoe or the tire that created that special individualistic characteristic we are looking for, that the firearms people make the identification. So tires are also important, but again, just telling me it's a Nike shoe, that's not going to work. We're going to need more than that. We got to need the Nike shoe to compare to the impression, and there's got to be unique individual characteristics that now make it that is the shoe that was left behind. And then our drugs is also another way. So what do we do? What do crime scene investigators do? And I know that we're watching the shows, and the shows are actually misrepresenting all that we do. They're actually giving us more work to do than we actually do. So the role of my job is to identify, document, collect, preserve evidence, and hopefully present it in court. The number one fear that human beings have is public speaking, and testifying in court can be super scary. What I tell people all the time when we're testifying is two things. One is you as an investigator will always have the distinct advantage over anybody, including a defense attorney who wants to destroy you on the stand. And the reason why I say that is this, because you were there and they were not. And because of that, you know exactly what happened on that scene. And the only thing a defense attorney can do is hurt you with what you put in a report, what you photographed, what you collected. I actually had a defense attorney right before a homicide trial in the hallway, whisper in my ear, "I'm going to destroy you on the stand." Now, he thinks that's intimidating. I'm like, "Sir, you're going to need a lot more than that." I looked at him and I said, "Sir, take your best shot." I said, "Because let me tell you how this goes. You can try to destroy me on the stand, but you can't hurt me with anything that I did not give you. So I already know what I provided for you." Sir, I literally could have urinated on that crime scene in the center of the living room. And unless I photographed it, documented it, wrote it in a report and collected it, you don't actually know. So he said, "Sir, take your best shot. May the best man win." And I don't want to be arrogant. It's not arrogance. I won because I know what I do on a crime scene. I know I'm really good at this job. I know I'm great at the documentation. I have a very high standard for ethics, for integrity, for what I do. And I knew this case was strong. I knew what I had done was perfect on this crime scene. And, you know, he's trying this tactic, which means he didn't have anything. Because if you're going to try to intimidate me, then you probably don't have a whole lot. So again, if I don't know what to look for on a crime scene, if I don't know what to identify, we could leave it behind. So there were times, I think I had a homicide where I had to go back the next day to a field next door to where the shooting occurred because the detective did not know at the time that the subject said a witness said prior to the shooting that the subject had picked up a metal pole that he found in this empty lot and was intimidating the victim with it. Well, we didn't know that. And it wasn't even on the crime scene. It was a block away. So we actually went out the next day to get it. It sat out all night long. It was the item that was used because the witness ID'd it. We couldn't do a lot with it because remember, it sat outside all night long, which means anybody could have altered it or tampered with it in any way. But we always want to make sure people understand that it is whatever the information is at the time that allows us to identify what we need to do or need to know or what we're going to collect. If I don't know, I'm not going to collect it. Y'all, I don't go to a scene and take your entire house. I need to know what's going to be evidence. We already discussed it. Just because you're living in a house doesn't mean everything in it is relevant. I need to get the evidence that's going to help us seek the truth in trying to determine what happened. So we have one chance to do this. We got to try to get it right. And we got to try to do what we have to do. So people have asked me, what's the longest amount of time you ever worked a scene? And I like to say it this way. I got called to a homicide where a husband killed a wife in a stabbing. It happened in the morning. So I was on the 12 o'clock news at lunchtime. I was on the 6 o'clock news that night because I was still out there working that scene. And I was on the 6 a.m. news when I was still there. So 3 newscasts, I was still there from 6 a.m. one day to 6 a.m. the next. And I wasn't done at 6 a.m. So that was 24 hours that I had been on that scene. We work it until we have to finish it. Have there been times that it took me a couple of days? Yes, you all, at some point, I have got to go to sleep. If I don't go to sleep, I will make a lot of mistakes. It's also dangerous for me. Okay, this is when I can really start to get injured. So there were times after probably about 19 hours, it might have even been 24. I'm like, time out. I got to call this one. An officer stays on the scene. It stays secured. And then I actually leave, go home, take a nap for a couple of hours, get a shower in, get up, and I'm back on that scene finishing it. If we leave the scene, we have to leave it secured the entire time. So an officer will sit there and guard every door until we get back there. So we have a lot of things that we do, and I'm going to get through this a little bit quicker because I see you all, this is what the CSI shows are depicting. You all, we do not do analysis. All right. Now, there are some crime scene people that are fingerprint examiners and even trace evidence. I don't know one that does the DNA collection and then goes back and does DNA analysis. Could it be that an agency has that? Yes. There are agencies that are trying to use their people in multiple ways, as long as they are trained to be that way. So yes, I could be a latent fingerprint examiner and be the one that went out to the scene to do it as well. But traditionally, we really are just on the scene, getting the evidence and bringing it back for analysis to be done. Yes, there are certified police officers that do crime scene work. Y'all, that isn't our job to go out there and get the offender. Our job is to be crime scene investigators. That's what we have our other police officers for. I was not sworn on my department. I was civilian. I had a concealed weapons permit, but was not allowed to and did not carry a gun on at work. So this is not something you would see crime scene people doing. We're not going to carry a gun and then go out there and do a takedown. Crime scene people get called to do the crime scene work. So again, when you see the analysis of it, analysis takes time. This is us. That's what you're going to see is us out there getting the pictures. You're going to see us collecting evidence. We're going to be in all kinds of situations and conditions. You don't see us looking really pretty. You don't see us in outfits that are not conducive to protecting us from the elements as well. That's my girlfriend, Chris. She's in the county. She's actually holding a skull in her hand. But, you know, you could have those type of scenes. So what are our skills that we need to be effective? Be good at multitasking because you got to do a lot of things at one time. Handle pressure. Training. Please be good at what you do. Be good at listening. Be a team player. You've got to work well with others. Even if you don't like each other, you must learn to work with one another and trust one another to do the right thing when you're together. Be willing to learn, be willing to listen to others. Be willing to hear other people and what they have to say. But I always say, do not render an opinion right away. Get out there. Don't have a whole lot of information because you'll try to make evidence fit. Keep an open mind. Let the evidence speak for itself. And if what you have on your scene is matching up to what the detective is learning through interviews and it's corroborating, it's coming together, then you have the truth. But you did it independently without bias and influence. You got to be physically able, of course. Critical thinking. I say if you are perverted, dysfunctional, and demented, you're going to be great at crime scene work. I jokingly say that, but it's really true. The more open-minded, the more creative you are, the more you're critically thinking, the more you're abstract thinking, the more you just keep your mind open, the better you do at this job. We can't be closed-minded. We have to be willing to listen to others, but get the evidence out there first, figure out what you've got there. And then from that, then you start talking and trying to see if you've got some kind of theories. And then I also say willingness to overcome fears. So what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of snakes? Are you afraid of heights? Are you afraid of spiders? Are you afraid of open spaces? Are you afraid of blood? Are you afraid of people? There's so many crazy things. We could be afraid of needles. You could be afraid of animals. There's so many crazy clowns. It's funny. So many people are actually afraid of clowns. I haven't had a lot of clowns on a crime scene, but bugs, these are all things. So the interesting thing is you got to overcome your fears. You cannot be afraid of water, dark spaces, bugs, insects, everything, because you never know what you're actually going to come across. In thinking, and I think, Dr. T, did you want to jump back in? I know that you said quarter till. You tell me, where are we heading?
I think that we're good. I think you can wrap it up 5 more minutes. What do you think?
Yep. Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you. So who's on your team? So you've got police, you've got detectives, crime scene state attorneys, lab people, forensic people, remembering that all these people actually contribute to your crime scene. They all have their own role. So we all work together. So you all, when you think about it, what does the detective do? The detective's job is to answer who and why. Y'all, why is not what I need to answer? If I go to a crime scene and I've got a homicide, it's not up to me to determine why she is deceased, why somebody killed her. That's the detective's job. You all, it's my job when we're looking at this kind of thing. And these are all questions that detectives have to answer. Do we need a search warrant? Who is the victim? Who needs to be questioned? Who are the people that are needed to help? Okay, I've had victims that were in a scene that didn't even live in the house that they were murdered in. So why are they dead? Why is there a crime that was committed against them? But what do? We answer the how, what, when, and where. Where did this happen? Is this the scene? When? How long has this been? Is there indicators that they have been here longer than we think? We don't interview witnesses, you all. If I need to ask a witness a question, I go to a detective and say, hey, can you do me a favor and ask the witnesses that soda can on the counter? Is that theirs? I've actually solved a case on a soda can that a subject left behind before he murdered her. He brought the soda in with him. That's what I need, those kind of things. It's also up to us for the identifying, we said documenting and collecting and preservation, asking detectives for additional help. I've called them and said, I'm going to need somebody else to come help me. Or I need some heavy equipment. We're going to take down this wall. So they're the ones that will help me get the additional resources and then coordinating with lab personnel. I love it. And I'll end with this. I want you all to look at this. And this made like national. Okay. I had students that sent me this. It was from Facebook. And in looking at this, and I love using this, I've done it with kids, I've done it with adults. But when people look at this, the interesting thing is everybody wants to render an opinion. Now, I already see some very big red herrings, I call them, which are totally meant to throw you off. This is part of my training. I have blood spatter training. I have firearms training. I have fingerprinting, photography. I've got so much shooting reconstruction. I've got a lot. But before you ever want to render an opinion, and you really need to be thinking this way in so many other aspects, is questions that need to be asked and answered before we render an opinion. And I have listed some here, just looking at them. There are so many different things. This is stuff that I would still be asking just to be able to render an opinion. So don't render an opinion until you have the answers to these. Now, some of them you're not going to have right away. There were scenes that I had to hold because I didn't have all the answers and we needed to see the autopsy first before we could determine if we had a homicide, a suicide. And even in that, it wasn't even either. It was a guy that was found deceased and he had a gun in his hand and they thought it was a suicide. He was majorly decomposed. We could not see injuries. He was purging with decomposition and everything. He died of a heart attack contemplating suicide. Who would have even thought? And it was classified as a natural, not even a suicide or even a homicide. So there's so many questions that need to be answered before we would render an opinion. So, okay, so Dr. T, I'm going to stop right there. I'll stop at that point. And I'll
Great.
stop sharing.
Great. And if you can also for us, if you don't mind, stop. You already did it. You stopped sharing. Great. Okay, cool. So Justin and Layla are gonna run the YouTube chat statements, questions, and I'm gonna run the webinar questions because we have a lot of people that are here attending the webinar, and we also have close to 15 right now viewers on YouTube. So again, fascinating material. I also want to just shameless plug and let everybody know that for the summer Dr. Plotkin is teaching in the master's program at in our shop at the School of Criminal Justice. She's teaching DNA, technology, the revolutionized crime investigations, or criminal investigations or crime
Criminal
investigations?
investigations.
Criminal investigations. Okay, great. And you're teaching right now currently in the master's program for us, right?
Yes.
What are those two courses that you're teaching?
So one's crime scene and one's firearms and impression evidence. Fascinating. I love them both. Great
Good.
classes.
Yeah, and the students are good?
Fabulous. Love
Yeah.
it. Absolutely loving
good.
them. Yes.
Glad to hear it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give, let's see, Jennifer Pendray. I'm going to give her.
I believe I know Jennifer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Awesome. All right. Jennifer, go. You got talking privileges.
Oh, can you hear me? I think it unmuted.
Yes, we hear you. Great. Give us your statement.
I just had a question about touch DNA. So when I worked at I've worked at Emmy's offices for a long time, I guess, but at one office they wanted us, like medical legal death investigators, to start processing touch DNA, which is pretty unconventional because we don't have any sort of certifications and collection of DNA. But I'm just wondering if you have any sort of experience with that, like collecting touch DNA from bodies or processing it in any way.
So excellent question. So what they're asking is, so in the act of coming into contact with the surface, we are actually leaving skin cells behind. So the act of opening up a door, or touching something, any of that, that's your touch DNA. So when we talk about processing, Jennifer and everybody, it literally means we are swabbing surfaces that people could have come into contact with. So a steering wheel in a car, the car door, handling of anything, even like say glasses where it's come into contact. So that's your touch DNA. So a simple sterile swab, a cotton swab, when I say sterile, it means it's individually packaged, and distilled water. We always use distilled water, and we use sterile distilled water. And just by moistening the swab and swabbing your surface, you are collecting the touch DNA. And what we have to have is standards of comparison. Because Jennifer, I hate to tell you all this, everywhere you touched today, you left your DNA behind. So if a crime actually occurs in that scene, we actually will be swabbing and collecting the DNA that is there. So, but by law, we cannot submit DNA that is in an area that anybody could have touched and entered into what is CODIS, which is our combined offender database, a DNA database that is used to link people to the DNA that might be collected, whether it's touch DNA or something else. But Jennifer, if I swabbed, say, a counter at a 7-Eleven that was robbed because the offender jumped over the counter, I would have to collect the date. I would swab that area, and I'd have to wait until the arrest was made to see now if I could get that person's DNA on the counter. Does that make sense? So that's what they're saying when they say processing for touch DNA. It's literally you have a drink that somebody's been drinking and you're swabbing it because of the contact with this part, the touching, and where I may have been drinking from. So that's what it is. And we want that, Jennifer, right away because it is fragile. And we know that people might be depositing on top of it. So did I answer that?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
And Jennifer, I know you had a couple of other questions or statements. Did you want to say those now?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of questions for this one. So
Okay, good.
I'll stop talking now.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Beth, and it says Beth Guest. So I'm not really sure your last name. I'm assuming, I think that you're in my class. Yes? Yes? You got talking privileges, so you should be able to, all you have to do is unmute and we're going to answer your question live.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Beth is,
Okay.
Beth, you're with me or?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Yeah, I
Beth
thought so.
Mikovits. Sorry, I
Yes.
didn't know it
Oh,
didn't
right,
come
right.
through.
Okay. Okay, cool. Very good. All right, go for it. Ask your question.
My question is, have you ever had a case that you've solved using a footprint?
Oh my God, it's so funny. You should ask that, Beth. So I actually had a homicide, and I'm glad you're asking that because it's actually incredibly important. So I had a homicide where a guy was stabbed. And when we got to the scene, there were indications of cleanup. And there were 4 other guys with him. Now, the victim was not deceased. He was still alive, and it went out as a stabbing. He said, and actually, I take it back. It went out. It
What
went
did
out.
you want for dinner? Did you
It went out as an accident, actually. So what happened was the victim said he fell on the knife cutting fruit. I call it my lemon case, I'll be very quick. So he goes to the hospital. I could see there were signs of cleanup, which was a little weird. There was a mop. It looked like the blood was being cleaned. There wasn't a lot of blood, but there were 4 other guys on the scene. What I found was that a female had been there because I found her purse on the bed. There was a small 3-inch knife, paring knife, that was sitting on the dresser in the bedroom. And I call it my lemon case because the only piece of fruit in this entire apartment was a old lemon in the sink under dishes. There wasn't lemons in the garbage. There weren't lemons in the fridge. Just this old lemon that was curling and it was black, getting dark and everything. So what wound up happening was the guy would have lived if his friends had called the hospital, taken him to the hospital right away. When he was stabbed, which we proved, the knife nicked his heart and he bled internally for 4 hours. He would have lived if they had gotten him to the hospital. The reason why I bring this up is because there was a fabulous fingerprint, what we thought was a fingerprint on the knife. And I fingerprinted all the people on the scene. We finally got the girl in custody and fingerprinted her, and it didn't come back to anybody. And it was after we buried the victim, the victim was buried, that my lieutenant said, could it have been a footprint? And you know what, Beth? It was. It was the footprint. It was when he pulled the knife out, he had stepped on the knife. So, Beth, without a doubt, cases can be solved with footwear. And I'm glad you used the word foot, okay? Difference from shoe. People mix that up all the time. We have characteristics on our feet that are the same as our hands. We have characteristics that are the same. We call them bifurcations, ridge endings, all those. But we don't classify you in a group as we do our fingerprints, such as a loop, arch, or a whirl. But absolutely, we can ID you from your feet. Did I answer that in a long way, Beth?
You did, but
Great.
thank you.
Thank
Interesting.
you. Okay, cool.
Fascinating, fascinating. And one last real quick thing. Babies are always footprinted when they're born. We could fingerprint them, and they have fingerprints at birth. They actually develop them at 7 months. They carry them for life. But we don't fingerprint babies because of the fact that their little hands are curled and we can't get their fingers apart to actually fingerprint. They're footprinted for the same reason. They can be identified by them. Okay, so thank you.
Great.
Fabulous
Thank you.
question.
Good question. All right, now we've got Gord. Gord is also a student in my PhD program in my class, and he's got a couple of questions here, and I'm going to just give him talking privileges so that he could just ask you himself.
Hi, Gord.
Go
Hello.
ahead, Gord.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, look at that. And I apologize for being late. I had to work, but I kind of caught a little bit with respect to pebbles in shoe prints, and obviously recognizing that shoe prints are unique to the manufacturer. But you're suggesting that a pebble, if you identify that specific to a shoe, is it fair to say that would form better evidence?
Okay, so so Gord, what I was saying is that, okay, so the manufacturing of a shoe, makes it a class characteristic when it comes to shoe wear, okay? The Nike bottom, the tread, everybody's got pretty much the same. But Gord, you're wearing a pair of Nikes and you happen to go across the beach and you start embedding some of the sand, maybe some pebbles into the tread. That uniqueness of the pebble inside of the tread is causing an individual characteristic to be created. So the wear patterns, how we wear out our shoes and the act in wearing them, you know, we wear differently. Like I wear out the front of my shoes every time. Some people walk outside, you know, on the outside of their feet. So the outside of their shoes wear out and it makes a smoother surface. Some walk on their heels. Some walk on their toes. So in the act of wearing the shoes, we can create these individual characteristics. But it's different from firearms. The manufacturing of firearms makes the gun unique. Okay, the rifling that occurs when the bore is inside of the barrel, and it's actually creates unique characteristics during the manufacturing process.
Okay.
Different from shoe wear. So do you understand? So the pebble, you know, now weird as this is, Gord, if I actually had a shoe that we actually recovered and I'm going to hope to get your DNA on it. I'm hoping I can match the tread that was on the scene, like in sand. I've even had people stepping on people and they leave an impression on them, whether it's in blood or something else. And in the shoe is this pebble. I'm going to hope that it left a unique characteristic that we can start to match the shoe more to you. And then last of all, I love collecting the pebble and any of those soil or sands so that we can now try to match that as well. That comes back to a class characteristic, okay? Just because I got sand under the bottom of your shoe does not mean it came back to a single source. But you happen to have a sand pit in the backyard of your house. You see how we start to make this case come back together?
Right. Yeah.
All right, so did I answer that? Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that.
Thank
Great.
you, Gord.
Great. Okay, great. Super. So, in the interest of time, because we like these things to go about an hour and not that much more over. There's a lot, the chat is blowing up. So I'm asking Justin and Layla to sort of, you know, pick like, they can each pick two of the best or not the best, but just, we're just going to let them choose. They're going to have a lot of discretion here tonight. So don't get mad at me if you didn't get your question or comment selected.
I'm always willing to answer to Dr. T. So if you want to throw my email, my Nova email in there.
Perfect. Okay, Layla and Justin, get ready. Here's Dr. Plotkin's email. Ready?
Give him the Nova one.
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, you go.
It's
Share.
splotkin@nova.edu. S as in Sharon, P like Peter, LOT, like Tom, KIN @nova.edu. I welcome your questions. You all, more than anything, I want you to get it right.
You have a really cool email. I have a very uncool email. I don't
What's-
understand. Like how many
what's
Telescos work at Nova? I don't think any, right? So it should be gtelesco@nova.edu. That,
As
like,
a matter of fact, I
would have
noticed
wanted.
it isn't that at all.
But it isn't that. It isn't that. It's GT, which is my initials, fine, 243@nova.edu.
Now, I was thinking that was a badge number or something. I don't know
What does that even mean? 243.
243 could be a badge number. I was
But who?
253, by the way. A lot of us do that, and you come from New York. It could,
Yeah.
did you come up with 243?
No, nobody
Okay.
asked me.
I'm gonna say
I
it's
would
a
have
badge
liked.
number from NYPD.
Anyway,
Sounds
just
good.
pet peeve. But hey, S. Plotkin at Nova, how easy to remember that one. Okay, Will, we're going to finish up all of the webinar questions first. And Will, you're the last one. So I'm going to ask you to please turn your mic on and go for it. Ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. We got it.
Perfect. Great presentation, by the way. I am a huge Law and Order CSI junkie, but after today, I'm seeing things differently. But
Good.
I will I will. My question was, can food be considered physical evidence, such as like a unfinished sandwich? And if so, how long can that be preserved in order before the physical evidence is lost? Such as, and what would you do in terms of trying to gather that evidence? Like, would you do like teeth impressions, DNA? I don't know. How does that work?
Well, I've done that. That's the crazy thing. Okay, so guess what? I had a carjacking where they got food from Burger King and left the hamburger. They didn't eat the whole hamburger. I actually swabbed the bun, the hamburger bun that they bit into for DNA. I actually had a burglary where they bit into a big wedge of cheese. I had amazing fingerprints in the cheese, and I had excellent dental impressions in the cheese. So I immediately photographed it, and then I actually casted that. But I swabbed the hamburger bun real fast. Like, y'all, Will, we can't, no, this stuff is going to fall apart. So whatever we need to get, we've got to do right away. I'm not going to get fingerprints from a bun. Okay, it's not going to happen. But I'm going to get really good DNA from it. So now I've also done it. I've thought of it in a different way. Food is important if it's on a scene, if you've got a victim, because victims do not digest food after death. So if you've got a victim that's there and she's got a full stomach and the food that she was eating I actually had a homicide. The plate of food was still on the kitchen table or the dining room table. She was found dead and murdered in a suitcase with the contents of the food still in her stomach, including full kernels of corn, peas, rice, and chicken. I know it sounds disgusting. Literally could match what was sitting on the plate. So we knew she had been killed very shortly after she ate. Also, the other thing about food is I always collect the last thing somebody was eating or drinking. I never thought this would come true, but I had a case where a guy was found dead by his partner, and he told his partner, "Oh, I don't know why he's dead. He was feeling pain and I found him dead." I found the drugs in the tea. There was a glass of tea sitting next to him, and there were drugs in the tea. Never thought I would see that. And then when they did a tox, the tox matched the drugs in the tea. So now whether or not the partner put the drugs in the tea, I couldn't prove. That was a really good way to probably get away with that case. Or did the victim himself? But the partner never said he put drugs in, that the victim put drugs in his own tea because he was in pain. So, Will, do you see how I went with that in different ways?
Yeah.
We'll collect the food. I'll take pictures. I'll do what I need to right away. I'll probably just put it has to go in a refrigerator. So we have secure refrigerators, but, and it's crazy the things we can do with it. But I know that 2 years later, when I pull out that hamburger from the fridge, it's definitely not going to look the way we collected it. That's why I have a good picture of it.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Good question. Now, Justin, you're going to come on, right?
Yes, Dr. T, we're ready.
Yeah. Where are you? Where are you guys? Oh, look at these two.
Oh.
Look at these two. Who are the best? The best undergrad students ever.
I'm going to say Justin and Layla.
Right. I'm going to say that too. But I won't say that in front of, any of the others either. But, that's why I said undergrad, because, all of these PhD students are all on tonight. That's great. So Justin and Layla are going to actually take 2 questions each. They're going to try to recover those from the chat, in the YouTube chat. And, sorry if we can't get to everybody, but this is obviously something that we want to just continue to talk about and talk about and talk about. It's really exciting, and so exciting about the big announcement that's going to come at the end. So take it away, Layla and Justin.
All right, so the first question that I wanted to ask was from the YouTube chat. It's from Kara Gross. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's, if you donate hair for wigs, will it still identify to the original owner?
It could. It absolutely could. So hair gets challenging, and there is really good advances in science and DNA. Technically, hair that's cut doesn't have a good source of DNA. It's hair that's ripped out, that's got that root bulb, that little white thing that we look for. That's where the source of DNA is. So what we say is it's called mitochondrial DNA when we're looking at hair that doesn't have a root to it. But DNA has really come a long way, and we're starting to get better results from that. So yes, Karen, that's a great question. The truth of the matter is the hair is yours. So we have to recognize that I could have hair on a scene that could be donated and is human hair from a wig or a weave. When I had that homicide, I actually went to beauty salons. I went to all different types of beauty supply stores, and I said, you need to talk to me. Talk to me about hair, where you're getting it from. What is it? I heard it could be horsehair, yarn. I heard it could be human hair. And then the other thing, and it was an important question to ask, how long do you wear it? How long are people wearing this hair for? So what I'm hoping for is that the victim and the subject, or the subject in this case, was wearing that hair for so long that the act of grooming, the act of putting it up, the act of handling it, I'm going to swab it for the DNA rather than trying to go with an analysis of it, because I know that the hair comes back to you, Karen. Well, I don't know it comes back to you, Karen, but I know that whoever's wearing that hair, it's not going to come back to them. Does that answer that, hopefully, Karen? Does that make sense, Kayla?
Hope so. All right. Layla and Justin, you're up.
All right, so the next question that we had was from Jillian. It's asking, what is one of the biggest challenges crime scene investigators face when interacting with law enforcement on a scene?
And I think there's a part 2 to that also, is like, right? Go ahead, give them the part 2.
So the part 2 is basically, do they ever attempt to take over since you're a civilian?
So that is a very good question. I will like to say, I don't want to say blessed. I think it's just fortunate. North Miami is an amazing agency to work for, and it's because of the fact that they knew that the crime scene people they had, one, came in with great training and experience and knowledge, but also they provided a lot for us. And I'll tell you, the one way I always got it through a detective who was sworn and got them to feel that I was better at crime scene than they were. So yes, without a doubt, always battled with that. I wasn't sworn. Y'all, I didn't want to be a cop. I wanted to be crime scene. I happened to work for an agency that didn't require me to be a police officer. I had a master's degree when they didn't even have a college degree. They just went through the academy. I finally figured it out. Rather than saying to Justin, the cop I'm working with, Justin, I'm better at this than you are. It would go like this. Justin, there's fecal matter on the crime scene. And I know that we could probably get DNA if we swab the outer portion of it rather than doing analysis of the fecal matter itself. So Justin, you want to jump in there and collect the fecal matter, or you okay if I do that? So I know it sounds weird, but what finally got through to detectives was that they didn't want to do this work. They weren't going to be in there sifting through blood and brains and all that crazy stuff. So instead of trying to convince my officers that I was better at it, one, I had to prove it. And two, it was stuff they weren't going to want to do. So that was what worked. And North Miami was wonderful. We knew what we were all good at, and we worked well together. So we should work well together as a team rather than battling.
Great. Good. All right, next question.
Perfect. We have a question from Ted. They ask, can you explain why blood has to be stored in paper versus plastic?
Oh, love that, Ted. You know why? Because you've made this mistake, Ted. I'm almost sure almost everybody here has made this mistake. When we were younger and we would go to the beach, we would all take our bathing suit off and change and throw it into a plastic bag while it was wet. And guess what? How many of us forgot the bathing suit was in the bag in the car? And what happened was when you got the bathing suit out, it had all this black mold on it. Because what you did when you put something wet in plastic was you trapped the moisture, which now allowed the mold to grow. So the reason why anything wet, if it came out of a toilet, the lake, if it's soaked in blood, if it is semen, we have to package it in paper to allow it to air dry. That way we don't trap in the moisture and now it can dry, and then we don't have the mold. Mold will destroy your DNA. Outstanding question, Ted. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
Ted wants us to all know that he's a cop, and so he already knew that. He already knew that
Ted,
answer.
did I pass? Did I
Yeah,
pass?
we'll
Ted?
see. Maybe he was testing you. All right,
I'm
hopefully you
sure he
passed.
was,
No,
because
go
every
ahead.
cop knows that.
Yes, good, good. Justin and Layla, take it away.
All right, and the last question we have is from Elizabeth. It is, how is the forensic field approaching 3D printed firearms? Does that change anything or bring about new issues?
Well, yeah, so it definitely does, because what we're seeing now is people can make guns at home with a really good 3D printer. Again, what's going to become important with that, I haven't come across a lot of those yet, and I hope we don't. But what I will tell you is this, what's going to be important is that if we can find the 3D printer, the device that made this firearm, then we're going to have a chance to match it. So the problem that we get is that we can have more of them out there. They're like disposable, you all. So what we tend to see is that, and we hope to see, I should say, is that firearms stay in the possession of people rather than shooting and then they just dump the gun, because we can link guns to crime scenes. So, but with the 3D printers, these guns are not made to last. They're not going to be used over and over again. So they're going to be disposable. So they can definitely do what they need to do. And then we're probably going to have a harder time tracking them or collecting them. If we could find the gun and we could find the device that it was made on or the printer, we might have a chance of matching it that way. So I hope I answered that. But yeah, that will not make it easy
Fabulous.
for us.
I think that was a really fascinating question. In fact, Layla and Justin and I were texting about it. Like, how does this new technology that, both criminals and non-criminals alike have access to in terms of 3D printers, how does that impact? So I think that was a really great question.
Great question. Again, though, I think it's a lot of work when you can probably pick up a gun for a couple $100.
Yeah.
And it's doing what it's intended to do, and it can be used over and over again. So
yeah. Well, Dr. Plotkin, I can't tell you, how much we appreciate your expertise, your knowledge, your experience, everything. All of it is just, we are thrilled and we are blessed to have you as part of our adjunct faculty now. And drum roll, I got to bring Layla and Justin on for this because this is very exciting, what I'm about to say. Everybody who's watching us, I hope, will be just as excited as we are. So April 16th. Oh, wait, I got to spotlight them because I want to see their faces. All right. So Alpha Phi Sigma, I'm the chapter advisor along with Dr. Allen. Layla is the vice president. Nicole Crimmy is the president. Justin, I believe, is the secretary. Am I right? Yes. Secretary of State. Very good. Excellent. And our chapter is Omega Tau. And Dr. Plotkin is the faculty advisor along with Dr. Aline, right? Nancy Aline at Miami-Dade College. And your chapter is called?
Oh my gosh, Phi Beta Theta?
Theta, yes. Excellent. And so we're going to do a collaboration. We're going to, both chapters are going to come together, collaborate, and sponsor a huge 4-hour in person, everybody, 4-hour in person crime scene and forensics experience. And that's going to be April 16th. It's a Tuesday at 1:00 from 1 until 5. Dr. Plotkin is going to be providing certificates of completion for everyone in attendance. We are limited to 30, so be on the lookout. Save the date in your mind and be on the lookout for a flyer that's going to be coming out asking you to register. It's free. but you're still going to have to register because we're limiting it to 30, and we have to share with Miami-Dade and the Miami-Dade students who are going to be coming, and of course our students as well. So first preference Alpha Phi Sigma members, and then after that CJ, all CJ majors and minors at NSU, and of course whoever Dr. Plotkin wants to invite. I'm
Just for
psyched.
all.
I am psyched.
Tell them though, you're going to tell them the topic or no?
Yeah, tell them. Go. Tell them the topic.
Okay, if you watch Dexter, if you like Dexter, we're going to teach you about bloodstain reconstruction, and we will be using chemicals and other forensic materials to show you how we enhance and find blood you can't see. It's going to be a fabulous, fabulous.
Very psyched. I don't want you wearing your t-shirts. We don't want the Dr. T t-shirts getting messed up. But well, when you come to it, we'll explain in the instructions and everything that we don't want you to wear anything nice, because if it gets stained, that's it. It's over. So we're going to provide, Dr. Plotkin is actually going to provide all of the materials that you're going to need for that. So it's a big event. And then we're hoping after that one is successful, which I'm sure it will be, then we're going to be doing maybe a week-long one, right? Yeah, so we're bringing forensics to School of Criminal Justice. Yes, awesome. And let me brag on Dr. Plotkin. I don't know if you know this or not, so I gotta brag on these two for a minute. Please, just humor me. So these two, Layla Horton and Justin Campbell, have been scholarshiped by the Broward County Police Chiefs Association to go to the Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences Conference in Chicago. How cool is that? Okay. How cool is that? So proud of them. And we're going to have a big induction ceremony at Alpha Phi Sigma for our chapter. We're inducting 9 members, I think, 9 new members, and 2 honorary members. One is the chief of Wilton Manors, and the other is our very own Dean Durham. So we're super psyched. Layla and Justin and Nicole and Chloe have been working hard at getting this chapter revitalized, and they're doing a great job. Very, very proud of them. So we have a lot of things coming up. Thank you so much, Dr. Plotkin, for being with us. We're going to unspotlight you now, and we just so much appreciate you. And we will really look forward to continuing to collaborate with you on important things like this.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Plotkin. A great show tonight. Justin and Layla, you are going to tell us just what's in March, because we got stuff in April too, but we don't want to overwhelm anybody. So just give us a heads up on what are the next 3. We have 3 more shows in March. What are they?
So first, I'm kicking off next week. We have the Anatomy of a Missing Persons case with Ed Densel, back again at 7. After that, the 21st, Thursday, we have the Public Defender's Office, and that's with Chief Assistant Public Defender Melinda Blostein. So that's going to be really, really exciting. And then last, ending out the month of March, the 28th, we have the Mental Health and Drug Courts with 17th Judicial Court Judge Ari Abraham IV. So
yes, that's excellent, great. And so the webinar link for my students has been posted in the Canvas courses. But if you can't remember, just find us on YouTube, Fischler College of Education, School of Criminal Justice. And the first thing that you're going to do right now is you're going to subscribe. If you are watching us on YouTube, a whole bunch of you are watching on YouTube, I want you to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button right now, and then get a notification of when we go live. And for my students who are present in the webinar, please make sure you email me. And also, I'll say it again. I know that Justin and Layla put this in the post, but everybody on YouTube, please, you must email me to let me know that you attended and that you participated, so you can get your little extra credit point. Okay. Anything else? I think that's it, right? Got nothing else to say? All right, good. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We went a little long tonight, but it was an exciting episode. We also download, after every show, we download onto Spotify. so that you can listen to the audio cast if you want. It's a true podcast, but you just won't see the video. So that means you wouldn't be able to see Dr. Plotkin's PowerPoint. But in any event, look for us on Spotify, Investigation with Dr. T, as well as on YouTube.